How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Killmark Collectors. Last Thursday or Friday, depending on where you're at in terms of time zones, the exploration update was released, and to the great excitement of PvPers and the weeping and gnashing of teeth of a lot of mission runners, the last couple of days have been a bit of a bloodbath. And so today what I want to do is spend a couple of minutes talking about how you, as a mission runner, can actually stay fairly safe and do a couple of things that don't involve rigs to help you still run missions and make ISK. So let's go ahead and undock and get started. To understand how people are getting ganked and getting killed in these anomalies, what I want to do is start off by actually talking through the anatomy of these attacks and kind of the steps that people are taking in order to catch the mission runners. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look here at how you normally will set up, and then we'll get into some of the different counters each step along the way. So starting here with the actual setup, and if you think about the way that most mission runners normally operate, they'll warp in from a station or a gate, typically a pretty good range, maybe 100 kilometers, something like that, and they'll start just killing rats, and that's never been a problem before. But what's happened now is we have a enemy fleet that will first send in a covert ops ship. These ships have the bonuses to the scanning, so they're able to get that scan radius very, very low so that they're not alerting their targets. What they're doing is they're scanning in, they'll find you in that anomaly, and then they will actually go ahead and have you scan down, and they will warp to you in that anomaly. Now they are going to be warping at 0, and so they will not be able to directly tackle you, especially if you're at range, that 100 kilometers. But what they can do is they can then tell and tackle that jumps in, hey, there's a battleship at 100 kilometers in line with the station. Now, the way that they can do this is basically just by starting at 0. They can look and see what's directly behind you, and we'll talk about more of that in just a minute. But what then happens is that that small frigate or that tackle is able to jump to the station and then immediately jump to you so that they can land pretty much right on top of you and scram you and start killing you. Now, the next thing that happens is the rest of that fleet will jump in, and this can be a lot of battle cruisers, battleships, maybe some high DPS faction cruisers. It doesn't really matter at this point, especially if you're a solo mission runner. They are going to be able to jump directly to you, maybe by doing that same trick, or even just by jumping in at 100 and then prop modding their way to you. If you're scrammed, you're probably not going to be able to use your MWD, and so it's going to be very simple for them to get in there, to get you down, and then it's game over. Sorry. So how do we actually stop this? Well, let's take this step by step, and what I want to do is I want to start by talking about when the covert ops ship jumps in. The fact of the matter is that even if you equip a bunch of rigs, you're not going to end up getting a notification because those cov op ships have those bonuses. They can get that scanning radius down low enough that you're just not going to be able to do anything. So as a number of people have mentioned, the best way to avoid this particular step is by going ahead having a frigate or a pod that has a low source radius that will get notified when somebody is scanning them. This can serve as an early warning system so that you can at least know, hey, there's somebody scanning, and then you can, warp off. Probably should have said this at the beginning, that you are aligned to a station or gate. In Low Sec, at least, that is going to be your safest bet. In Null Sec, it's a little bit different, but we're just focusing on Low Sec right now. So with that, you can do this with a day 1 pod. If you don't have an alt, I'll put a link to the video up above about setting one of those up. It's very simple. You just have to have a different device or an emulator or something like that, but that can be the difference between life and death for you. In step 2, when the cov op ship is going to be warping to 0, they're going to be cloaking while they're in warp because they don't want you to know that they're in your anomaly. So you can actually park that pod at 0, or you can jettison a couple of cans so that when that cov op ship jumps in, they get decloaked. If you're really lucky, what'll happen is they will be so focused on you that they may not notice that they've been decloaked, and then the rats will focus down them and kill them. But at the very least, you'll at least get some warning, hey, I've got an enemy that just appeared in the middle of my anomaly. It's probably the time for me to get out of here. what I would recommend is that you kill all of the rats in the first wave, and then you go ahead and you bring your ship back into that anomaly at 0. You drop a can or you park that pod. Again, the pod is not going to get aggressed by the rats, so that's kind of nice. And you can just then move back to your range either by warping out or just prop modding out, and then you can go from there. The third counter that's going to be really helpful here is make sure that you're at least 130 kilometers away from the mission beacon. Now, I realize that this may take you out of range of your drones or something like that, and so you may have to be a little bit more patient waiting for them to come to you, but what it allows you to do is to stay out of range of those scrams if a frigate warps in right away. If you're aligned, this may give you enough time to get up to speed and get out, but if they can only warp in at 100, if you are, again, in line with the station, if they're at 100 and they warp in, you are out of their scram range, they're going to have to move towards you. That gives you a little bit extra time to get out. Now, with that being said, the other thing here is that if they do jump in, make sure that you have some anti-frigate weapons equipped. Now, you may be able to put a large newt on so that you can go ahead and just drain their capacitor and they can't get enough points on you. Remember that they will still need cap in order to actually activate those warp disruptors. If you have several points of stability on there already, even if you just shut down one of those warp disruptors, that might be enough for you to break away and get free. The other thing is, especially if you're running anything but a drone ship, you have a couple of drone slots. Rather than throwing a large drone or maybe even a medium drone in there, you may want to consider throwing small drones in so that if you do need to try to quickly kill that frigate before it pops in and the rest of the fleet warps to it, you have a little bit more options. You're not just sitting there watching them speed tank you. So that's number 4, is have some anti-frigate weapons, large newts, small drones, things like that. Especially on the drone side, if you're not running a drone ship, you're not going to end up, applying DPS with those drones anyways if you're at range. So you might as well, kind of prepare yourself for that eventuality. And then number 5 here, we do want to make sure that we are not putting any celestials or anything that could be used as a warp vector, if you will, to warp into us behind us. So as you can see here, rather than being next to a planet or in line with a planet or in line with the station or the gate, I've moved out. I am now able to prevent anyone from warping in behind me at range. So again, it just gives me that little bit of extra time. I still want to be aligned to the station, but I'm not in line with the station, if that makes any sense. And then if all else fails and you do get jumped, unfortunately the best thing that you can do is just panic buy insurance and make sure that you are ready to lose that ship, because sorry, there's just not a whole lot more you can do here. 2 big things that I want to mention here that you'll probably see other places that I'm not going to recommend are watching local and equipping emission scan rigs, or whatever the source radius reduction rigs are. The reason for this is that when you're in a low sec system, there's going to be a lot of traffic coming in and out, and it's going to be pretty hard, especially if you're not used to it, to watch local and understand kind of a baseline of what's normal activity and what's potentially a gang coming into gang queue. I think that if we get to the point where there's more stability, I'll say, then that might be a viable strategy. But right now, I don't think that that's where you should be putting your mental energy as you're running these missions and trying to stay alive. The emission scan rigs, I don't think that they're very useful, especially on a battleship. You may want to put some on a frigate or something like that, but those are already so small that, again, I just don't think that they're really going to help you that much. Again, if you feel differently, let me know in the comments down below. Either way, guys, I hope that this really helped. I know that right now there's a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth from mission runners as they're losing big, expensive ships. And so I'm hoping that some of these tips will help you be able to kind of defend yourself a little bit and give you some more options to be able to stay alive and keep making ISK on those big ticket missions. So thanks so much. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all the things. You know how to do it down below. Until next time, the next video, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you've gotten something out of this, and fly safe.